Good morning. Thank you for joining us for the webinar on Greater Good, Humanities and Academia Application Tips and Tricks. If you're here for this grant opportunity, we're going to go over, we're going to start in just a few minutes. If you're just learning about this or you want to know more about Florida Humanities and what we offer, you are welcome to join us as well. My name is Stephanie Chill. I am the grants coordinator with Florida Humanities. A little bit of housekeeping. In this webinar format, you can see us, but we cannot see you. In the bottom middle of your screen, you will see an icon for Q&A. As we go through this, if you have questions, please list them there. Lindsay Morrison, who is our grants director, who is on the call, she'll be monitoring that section as we go through the webinar. Following our webinar today, we will send a link to the recording as well as a follow-up survey. Please take a few minutes to do that if you can. We appreciate the feedback. It helps us know what we're doing well and where we can improve. Let's get started. As I mentioned, I'm Stephanie Chill. I'm grants coordinator and I work with Lindsay Morrison, our grants director. I help with a lot of our open grants, managing day-to-day documents and outreach. And for Greater Good, Humanities and Academia, I am the point person. I oversee this grant opportunity from start to finish. If you have any questions, if you are applying, I will be your main point of contact. So in the webinar today, we're going to look at Florida Humanities, some of the definitions that we use. We're going to go over the grant opportunity, Greater Good, Humanities and Academia, and look at some successful applications. We'll go over successful grants, we'll go over our deadlines, as well as the budget forms, including cost share, what we're looking for. We'll also at the end go over how to apply. Florida Humanities was established in 1973. Our mission is to preserve, promote, and share the history, literature, culture, and personal stories that offer Floridians a better understanding of themselves, their communities, and their state. Now, while our mission is Florida driven, obviously, our mission and a lot of our guidelines and processes do come down from the National Endowment for the Humanities, who is an affiliate. We're closely aligned with what they do to help promote and fund programs in the state of Florida. So what are the humanities and how does that differ from public humanities programming? So if you are on this call as an applicant, you are probably a faculty member, but for those of us joining, I'm just going to cover some of these definitions as we use them. The humanities disciplines cover a wide range of areas. This is a short list of them. When we talk about humanities programming, we also are looking for programs that maybe start in other fields, but that have humanities content. So content that is built around some of these areas and ideas. Humanities as itself, we consider the process of pursuing and understanding of our shared human experience. Through the humanities, we, as well as all of those attending our programs, are encouraged to think creatively and critically, to reason and to ask questions. So what is public humanities programming? So this is using all of those disciplines and creating active learning experiences for the public that draw upon the methods and insights of the humanities. It fosters greater understanding among people and it invites thoughtful reflection. And the key here really is active. We're looking for public humanities programming that really inspires and sparks conversations, dialogues, that allows people to reflect, but reflect with others about what it means to be human, how these topics, how these areas of interest really help make us who we are. Some examples of humanities programming that we see are lecture series or podcasts, outdoor heritage signage and exhibitions, oral history projects, community conversations, reading groups, or film screenings. And within all of these, the key component again is that active engagement. So for example, if you were applying for a grant to fund outdoor heritage signage, that is something that people could go up, certainly interact with, but they would do it on their own terms. They do it maybe passively. So we're looking for a project that would involve and ask for funding for the signage, but then also create an event, maybe a kickoff event or a panel discussion, so that the public can be invited to discuss that signage with scholars, with others, and really talk about the whys and hows and whos of that project and understand how that parallels or connects to them personally. These are, again, just some examples. We are always looking for other ideas, and we love for people to think outside the box and think of new ideas. Now, projects we cannot support. We cannot support projects that are strictly based in the arts or performing arts. So for example, theatrical production for the sake of entertainment. If we are just putting on a play or a music recital, that by itself we couldn't fund. Now, if there were pieces of the recital or the play or something that would fall under the arts, but it's interspersed with a panel discussion or dialogue, people talking about and reflecting on what they just saw or heard and how that relates to the history or even contemporary society, how that relates to us as people, and how that makes us a bit of who we are, how that builds our society. A project like that would be more fundable, but art by itself is something we cannot fund. We can't fund social service projects. So that is related to really wonderful projects that I'm sure many communities are in need of. But if it is a project that is about helping an individual and not based in that scholarly discussion, it's not a fundable project. We also cannot fund creative or scholarly research without public engagement. So a research project that isn't promoted into the public, that is just going into the archives, a project or even a publication by itself is not fundable. We also can't fund projects that don't have all the details. When our evaluation team goes through the applications, it's very important that they understand what the project is and what the funding goes towards. We aren't able to fund projects that are vague or a little bit fuzzy in the details. There are other areas within our projects that Florida Humanities funding cannot go towards. These are federal funds. So things like alcohol or food or refreshments that don't relate to the programming cannot be funded. If you have a program and you want to bring in a musician or orchestra, but that musician or orchestra doesn't relate directly to the programming, we can't fund that person just being a part of it. Certainly, if you have questions on these, we are always happy to discuss these more in depth. So now we're going to go over Greater Good, Humanities in Academia, do a little overview of this grant opportunity. Now, this is the second year we have done this opportunity. We have offered this. And within the first year, there were 2 rounds. We always try to structure this grant so that they align with what is typically the fall and spring semesters of Florida colleges and universities. This is an opportunity that is only available for departments, programs related to colleges and universities. What we have seen, though, within those first 2 rounds is that we were able to fund 90% of applications that came in. Greater Good offers up to $5,000 in support of public humanities programming. Now, eligibility requirements, this is offered to humanities-related departments, such as the Department of History or English, humanities centers, institutes, programs, all of those associated with Florida colleges and universities. Is my department or institution eligible? So what you want to look at closely is within the structure. So overarching institutions might have multiple applications. But again, we can only have 1 application per department. So within the School of Humanities, maybe there is the Department of English and the Department of History. Within that, the Department of English could apply and the Department of History could apply. Their applications would be reviewed separately and based and evaluated on their own merits. They are not in competition with each other. But 2 applications from the Department of History would not be accepted. This is something that you do want to reach out and talk with your head of department or maybe a fiscal officer or grant writer at your institution. We have seen that every college and university has a different structure, different processes. So you'll want to check on your side to see what the process is for applications, if there is an internal system you have to go through before applying with us. Now, when projects come through, we are looking for projects that inspire constructive dialogue with the public, involve humanities scholars and other subject area experts, projects that are free and widely available to the public, and programming can be in person or virtual or a hybrid of both, and projects that attract a diverse audience beyond the campus community. We certainly want you to reach out and involve students, other faculty members, people on campus, but we really want to see projects that are going into the community and offering all of the wonderful research and content that is being created at higher education levels, and bring that into the communities that don't always have access to that or don't always feel comfortable coming onto campus. Who qualifies as a humanities scholar? So again, I'm going to go over what our definition is of this. Many of you are probably humanities scholars, but to identify it, we are looking for an individual with an advanced degree in one of the disciplines of the humanities. Ideally, this person is somebody who is also actively working in the field so that they are very familiar with the most current knowledge and information on the topic at hand and within their specialty. We also look for projects that involve multiple humanities scholars, as well as subject area experts and community experts. The more people involved, the more perspectives you have, creates a richer program, a richer discussion. All of these people are eligible for an honoraria for their participation, as long as they're not already being funded for the project through the university or another type of sponsorship. So we're going to go over a couple examples. The first I'd like to cover is the University of West Florida Historic Trust. They applied and received $2,000 in funding for program support of admiring the Hush Arbor. This is a program that they've had for a few years, which has gone in between virtual and in-person due to the pandemic, and this was one of their first in-person events. Now, the $2,000 in support of the public program went towards honoraria, which allowed them to bring in community experts to be in dialogue with local scholars at UWF and bring them in from out of town. The funding also went towards marketing on social media, on their Facebook and Instagram platforms, as well as allow them to secure radio ad spots. Some of the costs also went towards the printing of programs so that each attendee was able to take a pamphlet home, a pamphlet which included the agenda and some additional information for all of the attendees. The other example I'd like to go over is Florida Atlantic University Department of English. Now, the Florida Atlantic University did receive two awards in the last Greater Good round. One was for the Department of English and one was for the Department of History. So you do see that structure here of the overarching sponsoring organization being awarded two grants, but those were in separate departments. The Department of English at FAU was awarded $5,000 for off-the-page community events for readers and writers. And they have a history of working with local libraries to create workshops, writing events, bringing in authors for reading groups. And so this was based on a structure that was already existing, but they were bringing in two new authors. And this allowed them to bring them in from out of state and provide honoraria for them, as well as marketing for the radio and social media. And it also allowed graduate student support. So the graduate students involved with this project, there was one for each author who was allowed to be their liaison to work with them. They also interviewed them and then took that information to create a document and a worksheet that was passed out, given to attendees to review and use during the reading and discussion when the author was in town. It was also sent virtually when the first author was not allowed to come in. And this is a great example of how we work with our grantees one-on-one. We know that things change, things happen. And so in this case, the county put in some lockdown measures due to the pandemic, and the first event had to change from in-person to virtual. They were able to reallocate that funding from some of the honoraria and travel into marketing to bolster their program. So now you've heard a little bit about what we can fund and not fund and what greater good is all about. I'm going to go over our deadlines. Again, these align with the fall and the spring semester for most Florida universities and colleges. Our first deadline coming up is May 18th, and this will be intended for fall programming. The grant notification is on July 1st, and the grant period begins on July 1st and runs through December 31st of this year. Public programs can start as early as August 12th. There is a 6-week buffer in that, and that is to allow us the time to get the contracts to you so that they can go through the university college system on your side for signature, as well as submit the cash request so that we can get funding out to you early on in the grant period. The second deadline is intended for spring 2023 programming. Now, this deadline is September 28th of 2022, not 2021. The application will close on the 28th of September, and notification will be on October 31st. And that grant period will be from October 31st through May 31 of 2023, with public programmings beginning on January 1st. This has a slightly longer buffer period for that documentation because there are a couple holidays within that November and December timeframe that often closes down offices on campuses around the state. The grant life cycle really begins right now with the webinar and going through the application. So that big deadline is May 18th, again, 2022. After that closes, the review period with our evaluation team is from May 19th through June 30th, where they will review any history related to your organization and grants with us, as well as the application, looking at each application on its own merits. We will notify applicants July 1st if they were approved or denied. Now, if your grant is approved, there is a 6-month period of funding. We will send out the contract, the cash request form, so that we can get 90% of your funding up front. We try to get out as much as possible early on to really help that program get started. During the life of the grant, we don't have any like mid-reports, but we do request and require that you submit event listing forms. So for each unique event within your grant project, we'll need a form so that we can help promote and also record this. At the end of your project, there will be a final report required. This is required 60 days after the closing of the grant period or 60 days after your last event. After the report is submitted and approved, the final 10% of your award will be sent as a reimbursement. If you are denied, we strongly advise that you seek comments. You will email me to ask if you can get the feedback, get comments from the evaluation team. I will send those out. Applicants review the feedback, ask any questions related to that to me, and then revise their application and apply again. We have found that most applicants who receive feedback and truly consider and take it to heart to revise their application do get funded in future rounds. So in order to apply, I hope you're excited at this point and your brain is moving and thinking about how to get on board with the grant opportunity. So the first thing you want to do, which you're probably working on now, is brainstorming your project. You want to know what your goals are, what your foundation of it is, how it's rooted in the humanities, what is the content that you are providing, and why is that important? Who's it going to reach in your community? Once you have that great, strong idea, you're going to reach out to me, Stephanie, and we're going to talk one-on-one about your project to determine if it's a fit. It's a great opportunity for me to learn more about your project and some of those details that really just don't fit into text sometimes, and a great place for you to ask any additional questions. If it is a fit, I will give you an access code so that you can go to our online portal and apply for funding. In our online portal, we will ask that the applicant be the project director because you will be our main point of contact, and your account will be associated with your department. And we'll go over that a little bit more when we get to that application page. Now, if you get through all these steps and you're funded, we'll talk about those other steps in another meeting. If you are denied, make sure that your last step is to seek comments. Again, reach out to us, ask us for feedback, ask us questions. We're happy to help. We do want to get funding out. These are federal funds that should go out to the community, and so we want grants to be successful. As you're working on this, and in our experience, what we have found is that especially with universities and colleges, there are multiple people that help with applications. So once you are logged in, if you need to add a grant writer or a fiscal officer, or an authorized personnel, we do ask that all applications are signed by an authorized signator, somebody who is allowed to enter grants who on behalf of the university. You will add them as a collaborator. When you are logged in on the application page, you will see in the top right corner a blue button that says collaborate. This will pop up a button where you can add collaborators by email address and give them the permissions to view, edit, or submit the application you're working on. If this individual does not have an account in the online portal, they will be prompted to set one up. And once they are attached to the application, they can see that from the beginning, from that beginning stage where they're working all the way through the end, and the final report if it is a funded application. They will not be able to see anything else on the account. It really is dependent on which application the collaborator is attached to. So keys to successful applications. So we're going to go over the application a little bit more in depth now, looking at the narrative sections first. The organizational mission is really specifically asking about your department or program. What is the mission or the goals of your department or program, and how does that fit into the university structure where you are? Well, we're going to look at humanities content and programming format, personnel involved, target audience and reaching underserved communities, marketing and promotion plan, community partners, and fees. Again, as I mentioned earlier, fees should really be little or none at all. We look for programs that are free or widely available to the public. Sometimes fees are required, and we just ask that they not be a financial barrier to people interested in attending your event. So looking at successful narratives, starting with humanities content, what we're looking for are narratives that are very well organized, that are clear and concise, that give us a really good picture of what the purpose is and how your project is rooted in the humanities. And as well highlights why you're asking for funding. So in this example, we have a strong first paragraph of how the content is rooted in the humanities. We have a brief overview of the structure, what the funding will be for. It's for 3 specific events, 2 in person and 1 that is virtual. This also covers the location briefly, and then it breaks down the events with more detail. The next section is asking you about personnel. Now, this is asking about anybody who is involved. So your project director, additional support, assistants that are helping with logistics, as well as any humanities scholars, guest speakers, community leaders, or experts that you are bringing in to be part of this project. In the narrative section, the application, you can do this a little bit more briefly, but it should identify who the person is, what their role in the project is, and their qualifications. So Do they have a degree? What's their current title? How do the skills that they currently have apply specifically to your project? What are the activities they will be involved with? Within this section, we will also ask applicants to upload two different documents. One is a section for letters of commitment. Now, this is a written agreement. It does not have to be a formal contract or a formal agreement. It could just be an email with the person saying, yes, I agree to be a part of this program, or I agree to support this program. The other documents that we'll look for are resumes for the people involved. Now, we know that, especially at the academic level, the resumes and CVs can be so very thorough and include so much. And unfortunately, sometimes the resumes may even be too large to upload. And if they are that large, it's most likely that our evaluators are not going to have time to condense it or congest it all, in addition to all the other material that you are providing. So that we do ask that all resumes be condensed to 2 pages. We need to see the most recent relevant information, and their background, their education as well. The application will then ask about the target audience and underserved communities. So this section, you should really go into detail about who your audience is. We do, of course, want to reach everyone, but the more specific you can be as to who specifically you're targeting, if your outreach is to certain areas of the community, if you are looking at audiences that are specifically related to certain community partners, list those people out. If you have demographics because you are hitting a certain area and your reasoning, this is why this is an area of people who are typically not involved at maybe the campus, list out who they are and how you intend to reach out to them. And previously, the marketing and community partners were together, but we found it very useful to separate this. So there's 2 sections. One is specifically to really focus on your marketing and promotional plan. So more so than just saying we will have ads, we'll print flyers, we want to know how and where. If you're doing social media, what platforms are you going to be having social media campaigns? What do you have access through your university or through your community partners? If you do print flyers, where will you be distributing? Are you going to distribute them, or are you going to have somebody help you do that as well? The community partner section will also ask for letters of commitment, but these are organizations, not specifically people, but organizations that have agreed to support your program. And maybe that is through promotional assistance. They will share it on their social media sites or share it with their audience. But it could also be people who are supporting your project in other ways by hosting an event at their venue or offering to cover refreshments, since the grant does not cover that. So you'll want to highlight who those people are, what the organization is, and what their support will be. Now, to quickly look at unsuccessful narratives, in short, they are short. So when we look at narratives that come through, if there are not enough details, if it's too vague, if it's too fuzzy, we won't be able to fund that. We really need descriptive narrative sections. Things that are too clear, that are difficult to understand, that don't give the whole picture, will not be easy to go through the system. You certainly want to use the space that you have. When you consider that space, you can look, there is a character count for each of these narrative sections, and that character count does include spaces. So do consider that when writing these sections. Now we're going to look at the budget. So we have made this a downloadable form in the application. You will download the budget and complete the form to re-upload and discuss how you will break down funding if it is awarded. The budget line items are the honoraria, travel, facilities, equipment rental or tech support, marketing and outreach, and other. So to give you a snippet, this is the top or the first page of the budget. You should be asking for funds that are needed for the project, things that fall under the allowable costs. And you're going to also record all eligible cost share that you project. There is a required one-to-one match. So if you are awarded 5,000 in funding, you'll be required to show 5,000 in cost share. We prefer for all cost share to be reported. It gives us a better understanding of what it took to put the project on, as well as project for future opportunities. Now, what you'll also look, when you look at this chart, the totals do not automatically total. So you will want to double check that your numbers are adding up, as well as in cost share. You want to make sure that these totals are correct, as well as the total cost share of both in kind and cash cost share. Now, all these budget lines on the front page should have a corresponding description line on the budget detail section, and that is broken down by the detail section for the requested funds and a separate detailed section for cost share. So these numbers here don't exactly line up with what you just saw, but I love how this is presented. And so I love using this as an example. The budget detail section should clearly identify where the funds are going towards. So honorary is 3,000, but it's not just that, it's 300 each for 10 presenters. Ideally, we would also see the name of each presenter that you are providing funding towards. So breaking down the totals for each area, showing where it is going, how that amount is calculated, such as here, the rack cards are going to print 25,000 at 9 cents each for a total of 225. That added into these other costs brings us to 705 for promotion. Now in the second section, which will be separated on the greater good budget sheet, this has been clearly divided into in-kind, so donated services, and cash funding that comes from the university or outside sources, but not Florida Humanities funding. But it again breaks down, just as the requested funds, it breaks down where all that cost share is coming from. So unsuccessful budgets, we often see that the detail section doesn't match the honoraria. So 900 for speakers versus 1,000. So we have to know, why is there a difference there? There shouldn't be. There, you could be asking for unallowable expenses. So if you're requesting funds for food or alcohol, that will not be allowable. A cost share does not, at least cost share doesn't equal the amount. So here we have a cost share that shows 4,050, but if the award is 5,000, then that will be too short. You also want to double check, as I mentioned, that these totals are adding up correctly. They will not auto calculate, you will have to calculate them. In the detail section that we have at the bottom, again, these descriptions are too short. If it's lodging, we need to know who the lodging is for. If you're having tech support, we want to know what type of tech support. Is that a specialist who will be transcribing a virtual event? Is it going to be somebody who is facilitating your event? Is it somebody to set up filming so that you have it as a recorded event? I mentioned cost share a couple times. Now, you'll probably go over this with a fiscal officer that you work with on the university side, but just to cover this briefly, when we talk about cost share, we're talking about funding that is not paid by Florida Humanities through the grant, but paid from resources within the organization. So your university, the organizing sponsor, or from outside organizations such as community partners. Services can be donated in kind. So for example, if you are working with a community partner who agrees to run a social media campaign that they will pay for themselves and they spend $100, that $100 would be in-kind cost share for their social media. Cash cost share would be any funds that are paid by the university or community organizations. So to go over a little fun example, just to break this down a little more simply, because this was an area that we do get a lot of questions about, we have the example of a lemonade stand. So if you are awarded 200 for a lemonade stand to buy lemons from Florida Humanities, we're going to need to see at least a 200 in cost share, but ideally we will see more. Now, in kind, your neighbor donated a table. That table is worth $50, but they're letting you use it in kind. They already had it. That is in kind worth of $50. Either you or the neighbor also spend 10 hours working the lemonade stand. So at $15 an hour, that's 150 donated in kind because you're donating your time in kind to work that stand. Now, mom gives you $100 so you can go buy a quality lemonade juicer and pitcher. So we're looking at some of that hardware you need in order to run your lemonade stand. And mom, the organizing sponsor, is providing you that cash to purchase it. And in the future, maybe you'll have other lemonade stands so you can show that you will use those pieces of equipment again in the future. And also, you're going to print some flyers. So you're going to use your own ink and paper at home, and you've already paid 20 because you have it on hand. So that's 20 that you're taking out of the full amount that you paid for maybe your paper and ink. And you're going to apply that 20 towards printing at home for this specific project. So if we add up all of your cost share and the 200 from Florida Humanities for the lemons, our total project budget is $520. What about indirect costs? Now, this does come up a lot, especially with universities and colleges. Indirect costs are most often shown under cost share, and this is usually related to utilities or administrative support. And indirect costs for Florida Humanities are capped at 15%. So 15% of your full award is what can be shown under cost share. So hopefully that clears up a little bit about our application, about the narratives and the budget. We've seen some great examples, and maybe now you're ready to apply for funding. So what you'll do from this point is reach out to me so that we can have that one-on-one discussion. Once you have the access code, you will log into our online application portal. You do log in under your own account. Now, when you get to that login page, instead of it going here to apply, it may pop up with a warning sign that says, oh, you already have an account. Because universities and colleges have been recipients in the past for many of our grants, you may already have an account set up. So if you get that message, please reach out to me. I can double check to see if you are already, if your account for your department is already set up, and I can add you as a contact. We do ask that applicants be the project director, so whoever will be the point person on your side. This is really important for us because there are multiple people who are working on your side. You may have multiple PIs working on the project, but we need one person to facilitate the conversation. We are managing a number of these grants, and because every university and college has a different process, it really helps for us to be able to communicate with one person to disperse that information, and then for that person to bring back any questions or needed documents to us. The account for the sponsoring organization will be set up for the department. So let's say it is the University of Florida and you are with the Department of English. So your sponsoring organization should say University of Florida Department of English. Again, if it's already set in there, I can add you as a contact. And if it is not, I will help you set it up so we have the right corresponding account. So once that is all set up and you are in there, you have your access code, you're going to enter it here in this enter bar, and it will pop up. You're not going to automatically see greater good. But once you put that code in, it should pop up first on the list. You'll hit apply and you can begin working on the application. Now, if you would like to look at the application before you start working on it, you can download the preview here. Once you are in the application and working on it, there is also a little button that will appear under the top that says application packet that will allow you to download the application and work on it outside of the portal. And again, once you are in the application, if you have others assisting you, maybe with the budget or the narratives, you will want to add them as a collaborator. So I hope that this has given you some more information on greater good, humanities, and academia, and that you are ready to apply. And if you are, please email me at schill@flahum.org. I'd be happy to set up a phone or Zoom call with you to discuss your project and get you the access code so you can begin your application. If you have additional questions, again, please reach out to me. I am happy to help. And if you do need to bookmark that page for the application, you will go to floridahumanities.org /apply. Again, here are our contact information. If you need to contact me or if you have questions about other opportunities, please feel free to reach out to Lindsay Morrison. And we are excited to talk with you and get your project off the ground and running.